I've made plenty of videos before of players who turned down a lucrative contract offer, and instead, they rejected it and then proceeded to fumble the bag. Some notable examples in the past include Nerlens Noel or Dennis Schroeder, though in Noel's case, it was more so that Clutch Sports screwed him over. However, what about players on the other end of the spectrum? These players rejected a contract because they wanted to bet on themselves to perform better, and they actually did get a bigger payday later. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and in this video, let's take a look at some NBA players who bet on themselves and succeeded. But before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to my sponsor, Dave. Dave is the banking app that could help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash, with no interest, late fees, or credit checks. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and struggling to make ends meet, it can get really stressful. But with Dave, you can get your money sooner without worrying about how much money you need to get through the week. That's more money to pay the bills, groceries, and other stuff. Recently, I had an unexpected expense from a car repair that I wasn't prepared for, but I was able to use Dave and didn't have to pay for it immediately. You can tackle those large expenses that you've been struggling to pay off to finally get some financial relief in your life. Millions of users have already downloaded the Dave app to get the help they need with extra cash. If you're interested, download Dave today at dave.com/andyhoops. That's dave.com/andyhoops. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Tobias Harris. In the summer of 2018, Tobias Harris just came off the best season of his career. In the previous year, he got traded mid-season from the Pistons to the Clippers. But for the whole season, he put up career highs in points and three-point percentage. For his efforts, the Clippers offered him a 5-year, $80 million deal. A solid offer for a young player with his level of production. But for Tobias, that wasn't good enough. He bet on himself to play even better and improve even further to earn more. The Clippers realized that Harris wanted more money, but they weren't willing to offer him the max he was looking for. So they traded him away to the Sixers. About to be a free agent in the summer of 2019, Harris played out the rest of the season in Philly. He was alright. I mean, he had some impressive games, but overall, I don't think anyone viewed him as anything more than an above-average starter. In the playoffs against the Raptors, where the Sixers eventually lost in Game 7, Harris had a mediocre series. However, the Sixers' priority over the summer was to re-sign Jimmy Butler, but he didn't want to stay. Butler had disagreements with the Sixers' coaching staff and wasn't a fan of some of the players there. As a result, the Sixers didn't have much of a choice. Butler was already gone, so they couldn't just let Harris walk for nothing. They would have lost their second and third options in free agency for nothing. And so, they caved in to his demands, signing him to a ludicrous 5-year, $180 million deal. It was a tremendous overpay at the time, and it still is today. At the time though, the Sixers didn't have any choice. In 2019, guys like Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and Kyrie Irving were all free agents. But the Sixers weren't getting any of them. They had to make some sort of move to keep the roster intact, as they were so close to making the conference finals, but I bet they're regretting it now. Harris's contract has been a huge bottleneck for the Sixers' attempts to build around Embiid. He's making near max money, but is nowhere close to being a max player. Jimmy Butler. Speaking of Butler, he's actually the first player that comes to mind when I think of guys who bet on themselves and succeeded. Back in 2014, when he was a youngster on the Bulls, Butler was known primarily as a defensive powerhouse, but offensively, still a work in progress. Coming off his third season, he put up modest averages of 13 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, but struggled to find his rhythm to score. This was his first season as a full-time starter, and he played over 38 minutes a game. Typical for the Thibodeau-era Bulls. After the season, the Bulls offered him a 4-year, $42 million extension. It was a reasonable offer, but he rejected it. Now, that money definitely would have been more than Butler has seen in his entire life, but he wanted more. Way more. He believed he could be way better, and with his renowned work ethic, that wasn't out of reach. A reporter once asked him why he rejected this extension and questioned if he wanted to remain in Chicago for the long haul. Butler responded, quote, "It came down to me deciding that I want to bet on myself. It was about me believing that I put the work in this summer to become a better player with the hope that my improvement will give the Bulls a better chance to win a championship. His hard work over the summer paid off. In his 4th season, Butler blossomed into an all-star, now averaging over 20 points a game, one of the best 2 guards in the NBA, as he took over as the best player on the team and took home the Most Improved Player award. In the 2015 playoffs, he impressed even further, holding LeBron to sub 40% shooting, while still maintaining his offensive production. Due to his improvement, he was awarded a 5-year, $92 million extension, over twice as much as the previous offer, and he was worth every penny of this new contract. In fact, I'd even argue he was underpaid for what he produced in the years following it. Butler has arguably the best rags to riches story in history. He's been betting on himself his entire life and continued to succeed. This time, it's no different. Jeremy Grant. Now, this is an interesting case. Back in late 2020, Jeremy Grant just came off a great series against the Lakers in the bubble. The Nuggets were already stacked with young talents, but they still believed Grant could be a core part of this team. They needed his defense, and they still wanted to keep him. The thing is, during free agency, both the Nuggets and the Pistons offered him the exact same contract, a 3-year deal worth $60 million. Grant, being an unrestricted free agent, had the choice to go wherever he wanted. Despite having a solid season with the Nuggets and having an established role on the team, Grant took the Pistons deal instead, cause they promised him the chance to be the franchise cornerstone of this team. It was kind of perplexing at first. At this point of his career, nobody viewed Grant as anything more than a solid role player. The Nuggets already offered him the same amount of money, but Grant took the Pistons offer because if he does succeed in being the first option on this team, his value would skyrocket and he'd get an even bigger contract down the road. It was a huge bet on himself that he can do this, because if he failed, who knows if he'd be in the league after that. In 2 years in Detroit, Grant did show he can be a score-first player. Though his efficiency dropped and he was quite inconsistent, he had games where he truly shined in the spotlight. Then, when he got to Portland, his experience from Detroit transferred over, and now he's flourishing, playing alongside a superstar like Dame. Now, he put himself in position to earn another huge payday. Had he stayed on the Nuggets, who knows where his career could have gone. Perhaps he'd never get this opportunity to have the green light he does now. Fred VanVleet. There's no player in recent times who fits the definition of bet on yourself more than Fred VanVleet. Despite going undrafted in the 2016 draft, VanVleet worked his way up to becoming a valuable piece for the Raptors during their championship run, and eventually an all-star. What made his journey so special and so risky was that he had multiple chances of signing a long-term deal, but it was never enough money for him, especially not the kind he was looking for. He once said, "I've never said it publicly, but I'm not shy about that. I'm trying to get paid, man. I've won a championship, now it's time to cash out. I just want to feel my value reciprocated on the other side." Prior to the championship, VanVleet was offered an undisclosed long-term deal back in 2018. Reports suggested it was a 4-year deal worth around $30 to $35 million. At that time, he was still coming off the bench, so that would have been a good deal for him. It's a lot of money, especially for an undrafted player. But instead, he negotiated for a shorter-term deal, a 2-year deal instead worth $18 million. The Raptors were fine with that because in the off chance that VanVleet doesn't pan out, they can cut their losses. When Masai Ujiri completed the deal, he had this to say about him. "We all know Fred's personal motto is bet on yourself. We know that Fred is no gamble, he's hardworking, dedicated, and smart, and has been fantastic for us. We're thrilled he'll be a big part of the Toronto Raptors for seasons to come." That 2-year deal gave him and the team flexibility, but little did they know, VanVleet quickly went from a solid bench player to a highly capable starter. For his efforts, the Raptors rewarded him with a 4-year, $85 million deal. But it doesn't stop there. In recent times, it's been reported that VanVleet was offered another 4-year deal, this time worth $114 million. Apparently, this happened during the 2022 offseason, but VanVleet did not accept it. Though the reports have been conflicting and we don't know if this offer was actually on the table, but I wouldn't be surprised if VanVleet bets on himself again and wants even more money. Jalen Brunson. I feel like the Mavs kinda messed up the whole Jalen Brunson saga. They were trying to negotiate a new contract for a while, but it wasn't until after the 2022 deadline when they finally offered him an extension. The Mavs' offer was 4 years, $55 million, which Brunson rejected. The reason the Mavs waited so long to give him that offer was because he struggled in the previous year's playoffs against the Clippers. They weren't sure if they wanted to commit to this guy. For Brunson, he felt like he deserved better, so when he finally did get the offer, it was too late. Not only was he balling out and felt like he deserved more, but he bet on himself to play out the rest of the season and exceed his own expectations, which he did. The 2022 playoffs featured an underdog Mavs team that surprisingly reached the Western Conference Finals. During that run, Brunson really came into his own. He averaged over 21 points a game and became the right-hand man that Luka desperately needed. However, when their season ended, it was clear that Brunson was unsure of what to do. He still felt like he got slighted by the Mavs, even when they upped their offer to over $100 million. Instead, Brunson accepted the Knicks' offer, so he can have the chance to run his own team. I don't blame either side, to be honest. Perhaps the Mavs did wait too long to commit to him, and Brunson didn't really blow up until the latter half of 2022, so I don't blame the Mavs for not committing to him early. It was a risk from both sides, but it worked out, for Brunson at least. Anyway, that's all folks. Those were 5 NBA players who bet on themselves and won. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think it's a risky path to take? There's been more players who flamed out because they rejected an offer they should have accepted. But I feel like in recent times, a lot of players have been betting on themselves to earn a bigger payday down the road. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.